Record now. Cool. All
This
right,
meeting is being recorded.
yeah, there we go. All right. I thought it might be like interesting to kind of maybe just start with like what's everyone's experience with work. Like what kind of jobs you've had. Have they been like minimum wage jobs or whatnot? It's kind of like a frame of reference, I guess.
Yeah.
So somebody want to start first?
I can go first.
Sure.
Mostly minimum wage jobs is what I've had. Like my first job was at Menchie's frozen yogurt shop, and I worked there for like 2 years.
Nice.
Great. And then I was actually there when like COVID shut down, so like I wasn't working there for like a while, and then we came back and like everything changed. They put like the toppings into like the little plastic containers.
Mhm.
And then I also did a retail job, fireworks for a while too, for like about a year. And that was a total shift from like food. And it was quite honestly very boring. Not a lot of people, like after Christmas, it was like not a lot of people were coming. It was a lot of standing and moving stuff around like by an inch. So like the store looked nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went to back to like food and also retail. I also work at a Lady it's a macaron shop, so cookie shop, which it gets so busy in there. There's a lot of people who have a deep love for these cookies and also take it a little too seriously, which is just like interesting to like watch, I guess. Like I don't know. But that one actually it makes really good money, like with the tips and everything. Like it's about like 35 to 37 an hour, which is really nice. But I'm just a seasonal worker there. And then I also work here at the YMCA as a part-time toddler teacher because I want to go to elementary education. So that's been also a shift working with like kids and everything. Definitely a different experience than like my past other jobs, but it's been actually really fun. But this is more of a minimum wage, paying like a minimum wage.
And I think we could probably get into this more at like the very end, but were these jobs like were you supporting yourself completely with these jobs, like having to pay rent and like food and all that stuff?
Not necessarily. Not until I moved up here because I just moved to an apartment this year. So now I'm like paying rent and I pay like my car insurance and everything like that. But like I had these other jobs like my retail and food service jobs like when I was in high school. So it was mostly just paying for gas and like my own expenses, like stuff that I would want.
Yeah.
Rather than but like my parents obviously like mostly, made food, paid for groceries and all that. But now I'm paying for my own groceries, and rent and like internet and etc.
Okay. Well, Jeremy, how about you?
I've worked a lot of jobs. Mostly, I worked retail as well, but I was like a stock associate. So like I don't know how people like stay in retail. You have to pretty much become management or work for commission because it's kind of shitty. Like the wages are really bad unless you become leadership, which I did become like a stock lead. And I did that when I moved to Seattle. I was a stock lead there too, but it's just, like the wages for the work is kind of ridiculous. Because if you're working in a 3-story, company or like a 3-story store, and you're just like running around, you're having to like, rearrange the stores every quarter and like deal with like shipment and stuff for like maybe like $2 over minimum wage. But I always worked in like service and like food, and I had like, so I always like had 2 jobs because I like moved out of like right out of high school. I moved out on my own and I like supported myself and went to school. Mm-hmm. But I like a lot of what she's talking about. I know what she's talking about because like I've worked with a lot of single moms and just like people working 2 jobs. The reason why I say single moms is because I've worked with a lot of single moms who force themselves to go to work because like they're just living paycheck to paycheck and don't really have help. So like they can't, like they're gonna go to work hurt or like a little sick or whatever because they're pressured by work, and also they like have to support their children by themselves. So I like, that's something I see a lot of still. And but like I guess I've worked in like restaurants long enough now that like I make good money, especially with tips. And but it is like with COVID, like I did know one server, she was like, I made 70K last year, and then the first year of COVID, she was like, I only made 11,000, and her like whole life was like thrown upside down.
Yeah.
But that can happen. Like I know that COVID really like scared a lot of like people in the service industry because like when you're working for tips, it's not guaranteed.
Right.
And Washington State's better because you still get minimum wage. Other states, they're like they're only, it's like they only have to get like 15 or some proportion of their of the federal minimum wage. So they're working for like $2
Yeah.
an hour.
Sucks.
And then that gets taken by taxes mostly.
Yeah.
And then they, they have to tip out. If they have to tip out each other, there's sometimes if people don't tip, they end up owing money. So it's just, yeah. But most of my, I've like now this is actually now in my life, I like live for free because my friends' grandparents are helping me out. So it was kind of like the reverse of Hannah, like you're on your own now. And I was on my own for like the last 10 years, but now I wanted to go back to school. So I was like, I need someone help me, please. Because honestly, it is. I mean, I know people who are like, servers who are going to school and working and supporting themselves, and it's freaking hard.
Yeah, I don't know how some people do it. It's just time. So much.
And a lot of people who do it, I noticed too, it does take them, like they're going to be non-traditional students because they can't like do school full time and work full time. The only reason why I can do that now is because I don't have major expenses. Like I don't have to pay for rent or electricity.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the generosity of my family and friends.
That's good. Naomi, what about you?
So I worked at like 3 places because I moved here 2 years ago. I'm an international student. So I didn't work a lot. I worked at Danny's, and last summer I worked at this security company for Safe and Sound. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. It's in Seattle. So the restaurant job was a minimum pay. It was like 15 per hour. With tips, it was like 20, 25 an hour because it was kind of slow.
Yeah.
But the security job they used to pay 25 an hour, so it was not bad. And I used to work in Marshalls.
Okay.
Like, when people walk out with stuff, I just write there, and how they look, what they're wearing and stuff.
Yeah.
I just write that down, and stuff like that. So I didn't work that much in America.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then of course, like I've had so many jobs too. I've had like retail jobs. I worked in a retirement home in the kitchen, much like Barb did in the book. So yeah, most of it was during like when I still lived at home. And so, it was kind of money just to pay for like cell phone and gas and all that kind of stuff, but not having to pay rent. When I finally was out on my own working jobs, I at least was able to make a more than minimum wage, but essentially was still like working from paycheck to paycheck. So, constantly like overdrafting my checking account every single month, and so Yes, I mean, I think it's just kind of identify with a lot of stuff that she was going through in the book too. And again, I was going to kind of maybe get to more of that at the very end, but it's just at least like, you know, we all have some sort of experience with working with jobs that really don't pay a lot of money. So, yeah. Okay. Does somebody want to read off the first question? Oh, and also if for some reason like the Zoom just like ends or something, we can stop the recording and then get back into it and then just keep going. So yeah.
So the first question was, where is it? How does manager scrutiny, time theft crackdowns, and drug testing affect workers' morale? How can American companies make the workplace environment safe and efficient without treating employees like suspected criminals?
Oh,
I answered this. Where did I put that? Oh, I put it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's in the answer itself. Like it affects their morale, you know, because it treats them like they've done something wrong, even like from the very start, you know, that they're already treated like criminals.
I said it creates an environment of distrust where the employees are made to feel like they are in the wrong, that the job is doing them a favor by hiring them. I think it's like a power play.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of what we're gonna, I mean, like for instance, I think a lot of it has to do, I mean, she wants us to connect it to like what we've learned. And I think a lot of it has to do with them having power and controlling communication and like instilling fear through like, what do you say it? Kind of like, I feel like they stop the communication between like workers. Like when it comes to like wages, they don't want people like, don't share this wage. Like I've had many bosses who are, when you get a raise, they're just like, this, by the way, just keep this between us. And I'm like, that's against, I can say whatever the hell I want. I don't tell them that to their face, but I'm just like, okay, thank you.
My fair share.
Because like many bosses, I'm sure still say that this raise is just between me and you. You really shouldn't talk about wages. It's like, no, we actually, that's a worker right. We're allowed to talk about. I did once have a boss because I got in trouble for talking about wages. And I was like, we do have the right to talk. And she was like, you can't do that at work though. And I was like, okay, maybe you guys can't allow it on. I didn't get into it more, but I was like, you might be right about that. You probably aren't though.
Yeah.
I could, but in my mind, I was like, I can still text people. I'll talk to them outside of work then.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I've had my fair share of like interviews where they're like, do you think that stealing company time is the same as stealing company money? And it's like, well, no, but whatever, you know. So yeah. I know. So in the book, let me see, on page 210, she says that treating people as criminals has a psychological effect. People begin to doubt themselves. So I think it goes by what you're saying too about power, that it's all this way to like assert your control.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes, it also kind of goes with the second question too, but yeah, trying to think of what else here. You know, one thing that like was interesting, I guess it's kind of like a spin-off of this question, but at her job in Florida at the Hearthside restaurant, she says that lower managers used to be cooks and lower employees. So you think that if those people were in that position at one point and they moved up, they wouldn't fall under the same like tactics that upper management would use because they've been in that position. And it wasn't obviously like explained in the book, but you know, I'm wondering if there was some level of like, as soon as you move up, any references you had before, like a position you had before, just kind of gone, and you're just doing what everyone else does. you know, which is like,
Well, I feel like that's sometimes how it works though, or a lot it works like that a lot of times because the people who move up in those situations are the people who kind of like play the game how it's supposed to be played. You know what I mean? They're the ones who like are brown nosing, honestly, or just like, you know, they're the ones who, you know, are gonna might keep their wage secret or just like and be friends with the boss and like not really question. And I feel like they when they get into these positions, they just it's like business as usual kind of like.
yeah,
I feel like that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, I think they like once they move up, they might be like afraid of going back down, so they kind of just fall into like how it usually goes in that position.
yeah.
Than what, you know, rather than kind of questioning or going to not like against it, but you
Yeah.
know, staying in the routine.
Yeah, I think to go
And I feel like
would be like just because they move up one, like they're probably going to be scrutinized by upper like management just as much as the lower employees are. Oh,
Yeah.
like you said, they're just playing the game, you know, because they kind of have to.
Mm-hmm.
So, so then how could companies make the environment safer and efficient without treating employees like criminals?
said that the companies can make the workplace safe by properly training employees, giving employees clear and reasonable expectations or behavior. Like people love their job and love the place that they work and are treated right, they're going to work in the best interest of the place that they work. So I think if you're, I feel like, yeah. So I feel like if people like their work, they're going to work together to keep it, you know, they don't want, if, I mean, like, if, I mean, there's,
Oh no.
there are jobs that I've worked at that are good. And it's like, we don't want, I don't want to go in there and like ruin it or do things that I think most people are like that. Like, they're going to be like, oh, this place is good. Like, I like how everyone's like working hard and has everyone's, but I've worked at places where it's like everyone's fending, you know, everyone for themselves. Like, this place is shitty, so I'm taking a break. Fuck you.
Your connection
Yeah.
right now is kind of like spotty, or it's
Yeah. Am I breaking up to people?
yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you treat your employees with respect from the very start and not the mentality of like you should be so lucky as to work here, you know, then you're not asserting that like dominant power at the very start. You know, you're kind of you're welcoming them with open arms. I mean, it doesn't mean that like every employee is going to have these like insights and is going to help the company, but at least you can treat everyone with respect a whole lot more. You know, whether somebody can pass a personality test or not, like that shouldn't really matter. Like if they can do the job, they do the job. And again, I think this is just a way to like hold things over employees that, you know,
Yeah.
so
Which is like funny because like when we talked about in class, like it's more expensive costly wise to like replace that one rather than keeping people. So like again, if they would just like treat with everybody respect, it honestly saves them more money, obviously in the end, rather than like if they quit, then you have to like replace, or if you decide to fire them, then you have to replace, and just it's gonna be more costly rather than having that person do the job and you know they can do it.
which I know that in class that we've talked about that a whole lot, and it definitely makes sense. And I don't remember if there's a question about this or not, but when she was working at Walmart, one of the employees said that it's basically like a constant flow of new employees. So
Mhm.
I think that yes, in general, that it's more expensive to hire somebody new than to like promote and give a raise. But I think that Walmart is like a whole different beast. That I think that they like their business is set up so that way it does have this flow of new employees because they pay so low that
Yeah.
that's kind of what
Mhm.
they bank on. So
Yeah.
so like, yeah, I think it's this kind of opposite thing that kind of goes in the face of what we've been learning.
And I mean, it probably works in a way where they're like the employees that are like cycling in and out are kind of like doing their responsibilities are like lower, so it's real easy to just kind of, and it probably has to do with the fact that they don't want to be retaining everyone because then they're gonna have to pay it, people are gonna have to get raises and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean,
I
I
mean,
think it's just
or
they make so much money, but their like overhead is so low that they can, that they can just like not pay and cycle through without having to like worry about employees that move up into management roles and things like that. So yeah. Anything else for that question?
I don't think so.
Nope. Naomi, do you have anything?
oh,
Nope. You're what, Jeremy?
I hope this is the next question. I don't know what it is. I guess it is the next question about personality surveys and drug tests.
Yeah.
I just said personality surveys just convey what organizations want employees to know. I feel like, well, she mentions in like a power, it's kind of like a power move,
Yeah.
which I feel like is kind of ridiculous because I mean, at every place they should have an employee handbook, but I feel like everyone knows, like, obviously.
Oh, you're muted again.
No.
Dang it.
You
Uh-oh. I can't
Oh.
hear you.
you shouldn't
cannot
take
hear
me
you.
from the register. Yeah, or you shouldn't come to. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you hear anything that I said?
Not really.
It was like, yeah, not.
I think I was just too far away from my screen, honestly.
Hey, I get like really close.
I was just saying that or I guess I'll start from the personality.
No.
Yes. Oh man.
Do you not hear me again?
Oh, you're frozen again. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah,
What about now? Can you hear me?
I think that question kind of goes with the first one too. I know that it was in a question that's later on, but let me see if I can find it. So somebody else talk real fast here. About that one.
I want to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Oh.
it kind of goes back to, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
It kind of goes back to what we were saying about how these are used to like control employees. And when Barb was working at the maids cleaning houses, like towards the end of the chapter, kind of right, like when she revealed like who she was, she said that like the personality test is shit, that it doesn't mean anything. And one of the employees, it might have been Holly, was like, that test means something to me. Like it means that like,
Yeah.
it means that I did something well. So I think it's this. So I think, you could think of it as like that the test is used to perceive that you've done something right. So again, it's another form of like control when really like it doesn't matter. I mean, you can still do the job, whether
Yeah.
it's this test or not. So yeah, I think that some employees, when they don't have a lot of like successes in life will gravitate towards something that they can view as a success that kind of helps them maybe define themselves a bit more. So in that case, that personality test for the maids was viewed as a positive, when in reality, like, no,
yeah, it's just yeah.
So
for like the drug test, I said that like it's unfair to them because like I don't know if like I've never gotten a drug test done, but like I don't know if the like some companies or organizations bring it to you or if you have to go out and do it yourself. But yet again, like on the low wage, like they have to spend money on gas just to get to, you know, to the doctor's office and like using their time to like, you know, sitting there at the doctor's office, you know, and then like if you have kids, then you know you have to like pay someone to like watch your kid if you can't bring your kid. So it's just like when like they're already like not making that much, it's kind of another kind of burden for them to like go through.
Yeah. I know. So on page 135, Barb says that one of the effects is to limit worker mobility in reference to going to take a test. And so maybe this is like a strategic way for employees, for employers to kind of like weed out maybe those who would be viewed as not reliable because they don't have transportation. So it's kind of like a covert way of, you know, only trying to find employees that will fit under like what you want. You know, if they can't go to take a drug test, like how are they expected to make it to work?
Yeah.
Which obviously like that's problematic, you know. So yeah. Anything else on that question? Jeremy?
I'm good. I don't know if Jeremy wants to add something.
Thank you, like move.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
I think I moved to a better place.
Okay.
If you guys heard that.
That's fine. We can move on to the next one. Okay, so the next one is, why do you think low-wage workers are reluctant to form labor organizations, as Ehrenreich discovered at Walmart? How do you think employees should lobby to improve working conditions? So I know, like, so on page 203, it says that employers try everything to resist wage increases. Unions would help that, but employees living paycheck to paycheck can't afford to strike and not work. And employers use this to stifle any union talk and make the assumption that employees are easy to replace. That whole thing wasn't from page 203, but yeah, I mean, essentially, like, you know, low wage employers know that a lot of these employees are working from paycheck to paycheck and they can't afford to strike. So it's just kind of like another tactic again to like control.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think?
I also think that like they know like the employees like are probably too scared to, because they think they might like get in trouble or like lose their job, and obviously if they're paycheck to paycheck, they need that job. So essentially I think most of it also comes from like fear, which is like another sense of like control, putting that fear onto their employees.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also that fear that if an employee does get fired because they want to unionize, that the employer will kind of make up some reason why they were fired that may not be true, and then that can reflect poorly if that employee then tries to go find a different job. Then you have to call and all that stuff. So yeah, it's pretty shady, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but your screen is
okay. My screen is still weird.
Frozen.
Oh.
But I can hear you.
Okay. I said low-wage workers are afraid to form labor unions because of fear of retaliation from management. The effects of losing a job to a low-wage worker is more detrimental than to others not living paycheck to paycheck. Because like we said, there's a lot of examples in the book of like people who had lived in their cars or are living in hotels and stuff. They're like living in unstable environments, and the threat of losing their job is too much.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It's like self-preservation.
Yeah, there's a quote in the book on page 204. It says their business isn't to make their employees more comfortable and secure, but to maximize the bottom line. So clearly, if employees were wanting to unionize, it means that the employer would have to start paying like better wage and all this other stuff, and it's like, that's not part of their business model. Certainly companies like Walmart, which like their whole model is based on, paying low.
Mhm.
So
yeah.
In one way, and I know it was on the news how, different kind of grassroots campaigns have allowed certain Amazon warehouses to become unionized. And it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of threats, it's just so much stuff. But, I think the main thing of how employees can lobby is you just need like one person to start that ball going, and then hopefully more and more employees will join in, But
Yeah.
as we've said, like it's really tough when employees like have to have a job, like who cannot stop working. So
I said low-wage workers can improve working conditions by communicating with each other, deciding what changes they support, and by approaching management as a group rather than individually. That way they may not be singled out.
Yeah.
And I think another thing, part of it too, is that besides like threats from management, I think it is hard because to be the person that tries to get people to join, just because it's like everyone to get, I feel like everyone is kind of in the same, everyone's kind of like scared together. So I think because in my mind, I would be like, yeah, why don't people just like, it sounds so easy, but when you're like in that position where someone's like, we should approach management, and you're like, I know, but I don't know, like if I lose this job, like that's a lot for me. And I mean, I think that a lot of times that's what people are thinking. They're like, I know you want me to do this, but I'm trying to survive.
Yeah.
So I mean, that kind of sounds like that, that is, and to tie it back to what we're learning in class, but that's kind of like a form of upward distortion, where it's like you don't really want to go up and talk to upper management about things that can be perceived as negative. And certainly like unionization can be viewed as like scary because you don't know how management is going to act. So you don't want to go up there with just bad news, you want only good news. And of course that distances things.
Yeah, I in a lot of the places I work at, because I just have kind of like a different personality. I kind of sometimes I'm like blown away that people are kind of blown away at what I say to management because I just don't, a lot of times I just don't get a shit about what they say. I'm just like, listen, like if I'm valuable, I'm valuable. And that's what I try to tell my other coworkers. I'm like, if they want to raise or whatever, I'm just like, just go and ask, like you're valuable. You're like a hard worker. Just, you have to like advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And but even people who I would think a lot of times who if they have like empathy and stuff. I see it all the time. Like management is just like, I don't know. They exert like power over people in order to, because management, if they benefit from having employed that, like, this is another aspect of it too, if management can keep workers' wages lower, their profits are higher. Everyone, like if in retail, in food service, it been the same for me. Like the store manager, they might get bonuses based on their sales.
Yeah.
Or like, so they want to keep their costs low.
Right.
And a big cost is labor. Especially like jobs that are strict in restaurants, jobs that are strict about like labor per hour. And in the really smart places that I worked at, they kind of pit workers against each other, because now you're competing for hours. And I mean, servers compete for hours too. Servers compete for tables.
Yeah.
A lot of,
that's about peer communication, that it's just like, that's one of like the drawbacks, is that, essentially because you are on the same level, like you are competing. So
yeah.
Cool. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. I can read it here. While working for the maids, Ehrenreich hears Ted claim that he's not a bad guy and cares a lot about his girls. How do the assumptions of supervisors such as Ted affect their employees? How does Ted compare to Ehrenreich's other bosses or yours? So I think that with other bosses, like when she had at the Hearthside and Jerry's in Florida, and then maybe even like at Walmart too, although there wasn't really a lot of interaction with management that I remember that was like extensive. But certainly with all of those were all overseer, it was like strictly business, like it's just the management, like just you do this, like there's no personal talk, it's all just orders. Whereas Ted, like he's not that extreme, but he's also not like the personal relationship. So he's kind of like the middle group a little bit, but I think he wants to be viewed as a nice guy,
Yeah.
I think that he kind of generally is concerned about the well-being, but with the conversation that they had in the car when Ted was driving her to the job, and when he said like, I'm not a bad guy, it almost seemed like it was kind of he was saying it to try and get information on which other employees maybe were problematic. So again, like, was it a covert way of like trying to get other information, or was he like generally concerned about employees? I think it's kind of hard to tell,
Yeah, I felt that he was kind of trying to manipulate her at that time.
So would it be that if there's any issues, clearly it's not him because he cares about the employees, that he like one of the other maids? Do you think that that's the mentality that he's kind of going for? Or
I think so, because it's not like it was like like I didn't take it as like he was being defensive, but definitely like trying to be like convincing. I'm not a bad guy.
I know that with that job, she talked about how like it is a very thankless job, the maids, like the owners of the homes that they are cleaning like don't say thank you. In fact, it's the opposite, they actually like hate them. And then she said that when people are when the maids are kind of out at like a grocery store or something, they get like bad looks. So the only person that kind of thanks them is Ted. So it's like they kind of like seek that approval, and maybe he knows that because they're not getting thanked like anywhere else. So again, it's just maybe like it's kind of a two-faced thing.
Yeah, because I mean, like he has to know that like they're not getting obviously thanked by the people.
Yeah.
Obviously, if he's been there like and sees the people that they clean the rooms for, I think he has to like know. And I do think it might be like a two-faced thing.
Yeah. And we also really don't know how much management, ownership above him is coming down on him too. So, so I guess there's kind of lots of like speculation, but yeah, but like I said, at least he talked more personally than the other bosses that Barb had. Certainly at the restaurants and certainly at Walmart, So, and have you guys have any like bosses that you've had maybe like a more of a personal relationship with, or like the partnership, I think is what it's called, or of like overseer where they're just all by the book?
Well, my mom is kind of my boss for one of my jobs, but
Yeah.
I know that my boss for when I worked in retail, we had like an issue with one of the assistant managers, and so our like director of operations came in and we saw him a lot. Like he would come into the store because it was brand new, and he like talked to us like one-on-one, trying to like get down to like the issue of why we were having issues with her and her management. But it was like more of like none of the problems got like resolved. Like she was still there. She ended up just quitting, but like he was, I don't know how to explain it, but he was just like kind of listening to like what we were saying and like made us feel heard, but like at the end like didn't really like do much, but was like, I'm here for you guys. I'm here to talk to you guys one-on-one and try to fix this, but like it didn't get fixed at all. We had the same issues over and over again. So
wouldn't that be a what is it, human relations, where it's like they're willing to listen, but not willing to like implement, whereas a human resources would be like, oh yeah, like that's a great idea, like let's do it. Yeah,
I feel like I've had a lot of different bosses. I've had bosses like that, and I've also had bosses who on the chart that the human relations one, was that the same one that was like whether they care about people more than like the work? Was that? Or you're talking about the management style, right?
Human resources kind of views employees as resources, so they respect them, they listen to their ideas, they implement their ideas. So
I don't know if I've ever had one of those bosses. I mean, I feel like I like on, I guess, smaller things, yes, but I have had bosses that are like that there is I've had a lot of bosses where it's like a personal relationship. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it doesn't really work out. If it becomes like a family, and then someone's always fighting.
Yeah.
One of my best bosses was kind of by the book. She was really fair.
Okay.
So no one ever really had, like, if you got, she was also like, if you were reprimanded, it wasn't like, I don't know. She was very smart with her words. She'd be like, we just, we can't have that kind of behavior here. We just, it's just not in the, and you'd be like, okay, I'm a piece of shit. But she was very by the book, very fair. Yeah.
I guess like my manager now, she got hired through my mom because she was a manager for another shop that my mom kind of oversaw. And so like I already have like a personal relationship with her, but again, she's still very fair to me and to like everybody else, even though we do have like that personal relationship. She still is very fair to everyone. But again, like my mom does oversee, she's the chief of operations. So like I do also see the other side of like on the personal relationship where like my mom will like send me in if somebody like called out, or like my sister and I both work there, and we'll work in the bakery, and like we're kind of sales associates don't work, and like if they need extra help my mom just kind of sends us there. So there's, I mean, we obviously get paid for that, but like again, like if we have a day off we could definitely get like sent in at any time, which kind of sucks, but
yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I mean, I think I've had my fair share of like overseer and like partnership and all that stuff. And certainly like, you know, if it's a partnership, it makes me work better, work harder than someone who is like an overseer and it's just kind of like, you know, just giving me instructions and just like do this and do that, you know. So yeah, but I mean, I've just experienced it, all of it, you know. So yeah, okay. You want to move on to the next one?
yeah.
Does somebody want to read that one? It's like the remarkable goodwill, generosity.
I'm trying.
Ehrenreich experienced remarkable goodwill, generosity, and solidarity among her colleagues. Does this surprise you? How do you think your colleagues measure up? What are some of the measures an organization could put in place to ensure a healthy organizational culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not surprising that all of the employees kind of at the different jobs all bonded with each other, because I mean that was like her peer social group, you know. It was like to help out with jobs, so that would be instrumental support, or no, the instrumental was tangible or physical assistance. So I mean, I'm sure that there was like some help there at the restaurant that she got, you know, some physical help, informational support, of course, you know, with basically like how things are done with each job, you know, whether it's the maids or Walmart or the restaurants in Florida. There's also kind of some emotional support too. So yeah, I mean, this was essentially like their peer groups, and it all kind of seemed to be like all of them would like, one thing that drew them together was their lack of respect and hatred for management, you know.
Yeah.
What they
I think
over. And I've definitely like experienced a lot of that.
I think the emotion support is a big thing in especially these types of jobs, because like a lot of these people, and I've been in positions where I've had to work 2 jobs to be able to survive. So you spend all your time at work.
Yeah.
So pretty much your work becomes like your whole life because you need it. And then so like all the people you're going to vent to are like coworkers. I think she, you know, when she was getting trained, the waitress is just like telling her all about her life, you know. That's how it is. Like you learn everything because you're kind of all struggling together.
Yeah.
In the same, everyone's like together and in the same position.
You know, it was also kind of used like advice on like, how do you live with making so little money, you know? So it's just kind of, yeah, getting like, you know, I know she also was like asking information on like where to live when she was having a hard time, certainly in Minnesota, you know, when it was just so hard to find a place, you know, asking for help from peers, because those are the ones who would know the best, because it like you said, they're all in the same position. You know, they're all making minimum wage or just slightly above it, but just not really making a living wage. So yeah, I think it's just, you know, that was like the peer group or friends. It said my internet is unstable.
Yeah, you were frozen for like a second, but you're fine now.
Yeah, you're back now. Am I still frozen?
Nope,
No.
you're good now.
Oh,
Okay. We lost Naomi, so I don't know where she went.
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit ago.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. The next one is unless you guys had anything else to add to it.
Nope, you guys said just about what I was gonna say, so
Sorry.
no, you're good.
All right. This novel is, of course, more than a report or on an expose of not getting by in America. It is also a detailed critique. To this end, most of the criticism might be directed at the Walmart empire. Is this appropriate in your view? Explain. Given that Walmart is far and away the world's largest company, is it right to expect the retail mega chain to be all the more fair and respectful of its employees? I think
yes.
Yeah, I think we kind of hit this earlier, whereas like their whole business model is bringing in low wage workers and just cycling them through.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Walmart too is that I think especially in the US, the reason why it looks so bad is because a lot of other companies can hide all of that. They do because they outsource it, and then we don't have to deal with like looking at it.
Yeah.
But in America, like I feel like everyone knows that Walmart employees get paid like shit.
Yeah.
It would be, I feel like, I mean, Walmarts are kind of crazy, especially the Bellingham Walmart. That one's shitty. The Mount Vernon one is much better. And I don't know if that's I think maybe it's like a management thing, because I like the workers there, I feel like are nicer, but I think that's just like a culture thing.
Yeah.
The other
I was
thing
gonna
too is I
say-
feel like I'm sorry, you can go.
No, I was just saying that like I agree, like going into like different Walmarts like can be like different vibes. Like one Walmart might be like really saddening till employees like just like don't want to be there, and then like you can go to a total different one and like they're like more chipper there, or they seem fine, like more like willing to engage with their customers. So just like it's weird to see like all the different Walmarts.
And I think that the difference is probably the actual like managers there, the store managers, those managers, because I feel like their actual corporate policies kind of like are based around, having high turnover. So they don't really like, I mean, I think that's why there's not like a stable culture, whereas some other organizations that really make it their mission to have a good reputation and to treat their employees fairly. I'm like, do you guys have any examples of corporations that do that? Oh, Costco. When I hear like I've been to Costco corporate, and I've known people who've worked at this Costco here. They like Costco employees in general. If when I go to different Costco's, I feel like there's not a drastic change in the culture, and I think that has to do with their corporate culture, as opposed to Walmart, where it's going to be different because it might just depend on the present management.
Yeah, I know that. So I worked for a season at Costco, and they certainly like they pay well. The benefits are great, and it's actually it can be really tough to get a job there because it is such a desirable job. So I mean, I think that's why you kind of get a consistency, is because everyone working there like knows that it's hard to get a job there, and so that like the way that they act is to keep their jobs. No, I'm not saying that in a negative way, but it's essentially, it's just like, knowing when you have a good thing. And
I had mentioned earlier about how like if an employee gets into it, like, you know, say someone had worked at Walmart and went to Costco, I feel like if they experienced that change, they'd be like, oh man, I like this. Like, I want to be a part of this. I don't want to mess it up. You know, I feel like that's a big thing. Whereas like companies like Walmart, it's just like people go in there and it's like, what are they going to mess up? It's already a shit show.
Yeah.
I know in the book when she talked about going through the Walmart orientation, you know, like it's hammered home this notion of like family, you know, that when you work here, you are part of a family. Like, you are not an employee, you are a member of the family. And so I'm wondering if like the Walmart uses that to kind of deceive employees to maybe like working extra without getting paid or all that stuff, because you're doing it for the family.
Yeah.
It's like the mob
Yeah.
for the family.
I know. So in Minnesota, when she was working at the Walmart, one of the coworkers said, I think it says page 180. She says, I just don't like wasting their money. I mean, they're paying me and I just wasn't accomplishing anything over there in regards to working into a different department. So it's almost like by treating it as a family, they've kind of brainwashed that, you know, you're paying me, so I want to do my best, but you're also getting paid so little.
Yeah.
I think it's this, you know, it's just another like roundabout way of control. You know, I know that studies have been done that like 80% of Walmart employees nationwide are on some sort of like government assistance. But yet, you know, the heirs of like Walton and Walmart are like, you know, a couple of the heirs are part of the group that just bought the Denver Broncos football team. So it's been like billions of dollars, but yet all of your employees, like, or the majority of your employees are like struggling financially, and you're buying a football team. Not
Yeah.
because of like it's a business opportunity, but like it is 100% like a status thing when you own a team, whether it's like football or baseball or basketball, because those teams don't go on the market that often. And most of the time, the owners have already made their money someplace else. So it's strictly a status thing because there's only so many teams. So I think I think there should be some scrutiny on Walmart because of the like just the financial disparity between
And I think
owners and like high level executives and all the workers.
And I think the thing about Walmart too, like another part of it too, is that there's a whole like their culture, I think, is to just be, they're just making the top people money. Because, for instance, I had learned in different like accounting conferences and like presentations and stuff that, for instance, like Walmart pretty much forces manufacturers to sell them goods at low prices so they can keep their prices low.
Yep.
But and they also kind of bully manufacturers by just literally paying whenever they want.
Yep.
Costco, when I went to the Costco corporate, they were talking about how they have a really good reputation with manufacturers because they always pay on time. But I feel like that same, like the same way that Walmart treats its like lower level employees is the same way it treats its suppliers and everyone it deals with. They're just like, we're just trying to take the money. You can deal. We're big. We have power. I mean, that's what it is. It's all power. Everything that they do is a power play because they're like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like for their lower level employees, they're just like, we don't need you. We can just get another person. And with their manufacturers, they're like, we're not going to buy a ton of your product. Yeah. Which, because they have control of a big market and they turn over a product because of their low prices, it does put manufacturers in a spot where they have, and suppliers where they have to kind of deal with them, or they have to just, it's kind of crazy how like a corporation that big can just pay whenever they want.
Yeah.
because not because they can't pay, but because they just don't want to pay at the right time. Because other corporations are doing the right thing because they have, but I think that has to do with they actually have morals and values, and at every level, and it starts from top to bottom.
Yeah, so it seems like they definitely have this like outward persona of this great culture, like
Yeah.
family like culture, but when you actually get into it, it's
Yeah.
there's I know in the book, I don't know if you remember, but one of her coworkers at Walmart, Alyssa, she was wanting to buy like a polo shirt that was on sale and kept coming back to check. And I think it was because
Yeah.
you wanted to use it because you have to wear a certain shirt. And so like the shirt was on like discount, but she just still couldn't afford it because it was like $5. So I mean, there's obviously something wrong when your own employees can't afford to purchase a on clearance shirt at your store.
Yeah.
You know,
I worked at companies, which is weird. I worked at companies too that, like, when I worked in retail, one of my first retail jobs, stock job, I was a stock associate at Route 21. And that was my first retail job. I didn't know anything about, I was just like, oh yeah, sensor stuff or whatever. They had a weird policy where they would do these like employee nights, and then they would have company wide goals on how much employees purchase from the store. So they would just like, they're trying to coerce. They would coerce, like management would spend like, they'd spend like these girls would be spending like $150 on clothes that they don't want, because their regional manager is going to be like, you need to do this. It's just crazy how some like companies operate like that. Like they don't understand, because it's like, we were minimum wage employees there too. And it's like, they're like, I don't want to pump my money back into this corporation that treats me like shit. And I mean, I think a lot of, like for instance, like I'm sure like a lot of employees at the Bellingham Walmart, they probably do pump a lot of money back into Walmart just because of its placement. For instance, having to get a lunch there, which is like, that's a pretty big daily expense if they're not preparing their own.
I was going to bring this up at the very end, but since we're already like going over it right now, I think it's at the 2 restaurant jobs in Florida, and maybe even the maid's job, but I don't quite remember or know if it was told. But essentially, like those employees had to buy their own uniforms, at least like pants and maybe some shirts too. Do you think it's fair for low wage employees to have to purchase their own work clothes?
I guess I feel like it depends.
Because obviously, if they don't, if it's provided by the company, that's an extra expense for the company. But yet for the employee, like they're probably not making much. So having to like, especially in like a restaurant job where you're getting like food and stuff all over your clothes, you're probably having to like replace your clothes every so often. So I mean,
I would probably lean to like no, but it's like not the full uniform, because for instance, we get chef coats and aprons and hats at our restaurant. But the servers are expected to wear, like they're expected to wear certain things. And so and it's not like a set uniform. So I feel like they do spend a lot of money having different outfits. But I definitely think that companies should probably compensate or like pay a certain cost. And I have worked in restaurants where if you get like shoes for crews, they'll give you a discount. But honestly, I think that is a con because those shoes, I feel like that's a whole nother thing, which I always talk to restaurant employees about, because the quality of those shoes is so bad that you end up spending more money getting new shoes like once a year or so, rather than being able to save for quality shoes, whether they're like Crocs or I don't like Crocs, but boots.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff happens. It's just like the company is contracting with another company and kind of, I don't know, it's like robbery to me almost.
Yeah, I just don't
Like
think
they're making.
I just don't think it's fair for like minimum wage jobs to have to like provide their outfits. You know, I mean, I've worked jobs where an outfit was provided for me, and then when you quit, like you give it all back.
Yeah.
Oh,
But then
yeah.
so I worked a retail clothing store job. I'm not going to say where because it's embarrassing, but they required you to wear their clothes, which makes sense.
Did you work at Abercrombie?
No, shut up. But you had to also continually, like, you had to wear clothing from what was in season. Every time something changed from like winter and spring, whatever, you had to buy the updated stuff. Now you got a discount, but it was only on, I think you got like one thing at like 50% and like and two or three things at 30% or something. So you had to constantly buy these clothes, and they ended up like getting sued a bunch of times. So after I kept getting checks in the mail from lawsuits because I had to because I was part of that, I was part of the groups that like had to like constantly buy the clothing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because
it's stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah. I guess I've only had one. I mean, like Menchie's, they gave us the shirts and the visors, which was like nice, and you could wear like basically anything but like leggings there. But I mean, after I quit, I didn't have to give the shirt back just because it was a very generic welcome to Menchie's shirt, and they're just like kind of pumping those out all the time. So like when I quit, I wasn't asked to bring it back. And then I know Fireworks where I worked, you couldn't wear blue jeans there, so like I had to go buy a black pair of jeans because for some reason I did not own a pair. But that was kind of like jeans are expensive, and like they obviously no rips or anything, so that was definitely annoying that I had to like go buy a pair of black jeans when I had like 1,000 of other jeans that I could have worn there. But all my other jobs, you just have to like look nice. They didn't like require me to like buy anything.
Yeah, I think for like restaurants and things, it makes sense that you have to go out and buy your own stuff. But like Walmart, where you literally sell clothes there, you could like discount specific things so much that employees can't buy it. So at least they all look the same. But yet they won't even do that based on like what Barb explained in the book. So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. And it could like suck if you go out and buy something like for like the uniforms, and like you could get it and then they'd be like, no, like that's not like the red, like buy this, and then you have to like go return it and then go buy something else too.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Who wants to read that one? It's after reading the novel.
After reading the novel, do you think that having any job is better than no job at all? Did this novel make you feel angry, be informed, relieved that someone has finally described your experience, gallivants to do something discussed?
I think really this is just like it's just showing me that. Well, I mean, this is just like everything I've already kind of experienced, which kind of goes to a later question where it asks if like, since this was written in like 1999 or 1998 or whatever, when the economy was good. But like the same things are happening and the economy is shit right now. So that should just like the cost of living and wages have not increased, compared to inflation and the cost of living and housing. But I mean, for me personally, I'm having those experiences is kind of what like pushed me. I mean, I always wanted to go back to school, but and now, one day I'm going to get a good job, and I'm just going to, I do like when I'm out and about, I mean, because now I make good money, even though it's still kind of a shithole. But when I'm out and about, I do feel bad for like people who, because I've met so many people, especially when I lived in Seattle, I met so many struggling people. I met people in Pike Place Market who were like working under the table, like art students that were getting paid under the table, under minimum wage. At the time, it was before the $15 increase, but minimum wage should have been like 11 something.
Yeah, I
And
was
like the
there.
pasta, the people selling the pasta, that owner was like just paying them like $10 an hour. And it's like, and then their hours were like, they were like struggling to get like 10 hours a week. And I was like, what the hell is going on? It's sad.
Yeah.
Especially in like a really expensive city. And that happens a lot in a lot of cities where people are just like trying to be, they're actually more concerned about eating than like where they can live, because they can't even afford to live. And then the services, like finding, having to deal with like working and living in a shelter or living in your car until it breaks down, and then you can't move it, and then it might get towed by the city. Then you can't pay to get it out.
Yeah.
And then there's also like employers not wanting to hire you if you're homeless. So I feel like that's why in like just like losing one paycheck can cause someone to spiral so badly.
Yeah.
I watched, there's this YouTube channel, and it's called Invisible People, and the guy just goes around and talks about like homeless people. One of the ladies, she was like on cardboard, like an old, like probably like a 50-year-old lady on cardboard. She had been injured, and she was just like in a New York street. And initially when I saw her too, I was just like, I wonder what happened with this lady or whatever. But what happened was she had worked for a company for like 30 years, got injured, and then they was getting support for disability, and then they like took it back. And so she was in a legal battle, but in all that time, she lost her place and stuff and had no money. And she was in New York because that's where she needed to go, because I think that's where their corporate office was, and that's where she needed to file the legal proceedings, but was living on the streets on cardboard and disabled. And she was talking about this time she was like putting on lipstick, and this lady like walked past her and was like, oh, why does she need lipstick? And the lady was like, I can't even like feel good in one day.
Yeah.
Like I can't, I'm living like shit. I've been treated like shit, and I'm putting lipstick on, and someone's judging me. But I feel like that's people in low wage jobs and stuff. They're like judged like that by a lot of people. Like, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Well, it's like, well, I can't just like leave my job right now, because it's like what's supporting me, and I don't really know what to do.
Yeah. Well, even those with jobs still get judged. Like she
Yeah.
said in the book about being a maid, that when you're wearing like that maid's outfit and you're out like getting some food or something, like you get judged. Like people look down on them as like second class citizens. Like you're so dumb that this is the only job that you could get, and that sucks. The notion of like having a job is better than no job in these situations, like, I don't know, with all like her coworkers that have to work like 2 jobs 7 days a week, like just to barely scrape by. I don't want this to kind of like sound dark or anything, but it's just like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, what are you working towards? And it's just strictly for survival. And it's just like, at what point will that end? It's like they just can't get ahead. You can't get over that hump. Like there's no place to live. Like in Minnesota, she was having such a hard time finding a like affordable place to live, and ultimately like couldn't. or maybe that was Maine, where essentially she just had to like leave because she's like, I can't find a place. Like this experiment is done because there's no affordable places to live. So yeah, I mean, it's just like if you're working 2 jobs 7 days a week just to be able to eat, it's like, well, you could be on the street and find stuff to eat too. So yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's just, I feel like it gets dark. It can get really dark.
For sure.
So yeah, and there was one quote when she was working the maid's job that kind of pertains to this that I wrote down, or not a quote, but just a idea that when Barb revealed who she was to the other maids, she asked them like, how does it make you feel cleaning these like super nice expensive homes with all this stuff? And Lori, one of the coworkers, says that she wishes she could have stuff like this, and that it motivates her to work hard, and that she isn't resentful of the people who have this stuff. But I think the telling one was Colleen says that she just wishes she could have a day off or two and still be able to afford to eat. And that's what it is, that's like they have these jobs. So yeah, I think the assumptions are once you have a job, it'll be fine, but it's just like,
Yeah.
all she wants is just a day off and still be able to eat. That's really rough. It's scary, and it's, yeah. So I mean, like, I don't know if having a job is better than not having a job in these situations. Making like $5 an hour, $7 an hour, like, yeah, it's rough.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Anything else on that question? Nothing. Okay. Who wants the next one?
Ehrenreich is white and middle class. She asserts that her experience would be radically different had she been a person of color or a single parent. Do you think discrimination shaped Ehrenreich's story? In what ways? Yeah, I think it would have been rougher if she was a person of color and a single mom. I mentioned I've worked with a lot of single moms who are struggling, especially if they are working, because I've met single moms who are barely getting assistance, and I've met moms who aren't getting child support, are barely getting any assistance because then they're working too much. But it's like they need so it's definitely single moms and people of color. I've known people of color who are single moms and having to deal with that. And it sucks too, not being able to, I mean, you're also afraid for not being able to feed yourself, right? But also not being able to feed your children.
Yeah. What I said before, like the person that's working 2 jobs 7 days a week, like what's the point? Obviously, when you have a child, like it's way different. I was referring to like someone who's just like single, doesn't have kids, not married, that kind of stuff. So yeah, obviously when you've got a child, it's just, I think there's even more desperation in there. Like you have to be able to make income. I think each job that she had was mainly white, correct?
Yeah.
With
Like there may be other when she was working in Florida, but I'm pretty sure that when she was in Maine and when she was in Minnesota, that it was mainly other white employees with her. So it could be wrong.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Do you think that how would discrimination play into a lot of this?
I mean, there's just like with gender and like background can also like be forms of discrimination. Like you could see like in a restaurant situation, like people might think like men are better cooks and like females are would be better as like waiters. Like just kind of stereotypes like that within jobs, which would like we've discussed in like classes, like in class about like those TV shows that like some people play like this role and that role. It can go for like obviously the same as jobs.
Yeah.
I think the treatment by the public also, like for instance, like maids, is also like, for instance, there was it was like on The View, it was kind of went a little viral, like it was when Trump was still in office. And I think this is kind of a good example because the girl didn't mean to be offensive, but they were talking about like Trump and some of the stuff he said about Mexicans. And then like Ozzy Osbourne's daughter, whatever her name is, who's on there, she was like,
Kelly.
yeah, I'm sure there's like Mexicans scrubbing his toilets, so he needs to be, and everyone's like, why why do you think that only Mexicans can scrub toilets? You're like showing your ignorance with and definitely, I'm Mexican. I've worked in a lot of restaurants that are all Mexican and stuff, and different races are treated differently. That's just a fact. I've worked in predominantly like Mexican and Black restaurants in like inner Seattle and stuff. So there is still a lot of like racial discrimination in America. And so I guess you're adding, how people treat, how people are treated in just by being a maid in public, like a white woman, you're just adding different factors of what's going on in our country to that. And I feel like, yeah, you're just like adding a lot of.
Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of there we go. Yeah, I mean, do you think that like the drug tests and the personality tests would be any different?
Maybe like language barriers for the personality test. The drug test, I'm not sure about that.
I think that we kind of established that these are things used to control, that to make employees feel like they are criminals or they've done something wrong, so certainly, her experiences probably would have been worse had she been not white.
Yeah. I don't know about maybe the personality test. I'm not sure about. I mean, the other thing too is it's like I worked in a lot of places. Most of my bosses have been white. So I mean, her treatment definitely probably would have been different if she was not white.
Yeah, I think the personality test could be used as a like discrimination factor. Like, oh, you didn't pass the test, I'm sorry. When it's just like, no, they're probably just like discriminating.
Oh yeah.
The test is like, well, I'm sorry you didn't pass it, so I don't think you can work here. So,
yeah.
All right. You want to move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay. It says nickel and dime takes place in 1998 to 2000, a time of unprecedented prosperity in America. How would Ehrenreich's experience be different in today's economy and organizations? How so? Support your ideas with relevant research, not just personal anecdotes and experiences. So I kind of did a little like research. So as of 2023, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And so obviously, like, that's not every state, but that is, states that only use the federal minimum wage. So currently in Florida, where she worked first, the minimum wage is $12. I think she was making like 7 something. In Maine, it is $13.80, and in Minnesota, it's $10.59. And so in Maine, the cost for a 2-bedroom apartment went up by 94% from the year 2000 until now. So in 23 years, it's gone up 94%.
Yeah.
Yeah, Minnesota went up 56% nationwide. Sorry, Minnesota then went up 56% from 2000 until now. Nationwide, the median monthly rent was 602 in 2000. And currently the fair market rate is $1,180. But certain states don't do fair market, they go like way above it. So I mean, essentially, like, wage is still pretty low, while rent and stuff is like skyrocketed high. So obviously, things have changed a lot since she did this. But I mean, essentially, in some of like her minimum wage in certain states is still the same as what it is federally right now. So like, I don't know if she could still do it now. Which
Yeah,
I
I
guess
did.
how do people do it now?
I even did it. Did a little bit of research too, and like compare like adjusting for like inflation and like the value of money. It had showed that in like from 2009 to now, with the 725 being the federal minimum wage, there was like it says the longest period in history without an increase. The federal minimum wage in 2021 was worth 21% less than 12 years ago, and 34% less than in 1968. And the 1968 is brought up because that was when, like, adjusting for like inflation, that's when the minimum wage was worth the most. If it was adjusted, it would be $11.12, which is still, like, in Washington state, that's not even a lot because minimum wage now is like 15.
Yeah.
And it's still expensive to it would still be hard if you were just working a minimum wage job, living alone. Because I haven't made
we also, in our state, we don't have rent control.
Yeah.
So homeowners can just raise it as much as they want. My mom, who lives down in Los Angeles, they have rent control there. So it can only be raised by a certain, like, small percentage each time. So that helps out, but in our state, it's like the wild, wild west, like anything goes.
Yeah.
Come in, they build up like these huge apartments and condos, and they just charge whatever they want because they can,
Yeah, even in Bellingham, it's kind of crazy because when I first moved out into my first apartment by myself in 2010, I was paying $650 for a 1-bedroom apartment, not a studio, and it was spacious too. Big living room, just a regular size kitchen, big bathroom. And now I don't know what that is. It's probably like 1,200. Honestly, it's at least 1,000, and it's like 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, because I moved in February. So it always blows my mind what people are paying for, specifically in Bellingham, because the jobs aren't the best in this town. Like, you really have to get your degree and run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like with like gas too, like transportation to your jobs, like in 2012, gas was like $3.73 on average. And like now, obviously, like gas is like gone down, but like it's like I remember like hit like $6, and I was like, so what the what? Like my sedan took up, it was like almost like $80 for like a sedan. And like just obviously basic grocery needs and all that, and like there's now the prices like with eggs now being costing more, so obviously it would be a lot different in today's economy for sure.
Yeah, my first ever apartment all by myself was a studio downtown Seattle. My rent was $4.90.
Damn.
But I also really like I didn't know it at the time, but it was because
Yeah.
the low income but like and that's I don't think you could not find any like now. But I think this made me kind of think about what what her experience was in each state. It was like, so she started each experiment with her car, a laptop, and like a lump sum of cash just to kind of get going. And it's like, and then also the idea that if things did not work out, she could just leave. And like all of that right there means that she had such a huge advantage over like someone in that actual position. So like as much as it was trying to be like authentic, it was still just so far away from like what someone like actually goes through.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, obviously with how much just life has gone up in cost and how much wage has like not maybe has not matched that. I don't know if she could do it or not, like especially starting from scratch. I mean, I think that if you were in this position for a long time and kind of kept going as things went up, maybe you could navigate it somehow. But I think starting from scratch with like no money, trying to find a job and a place at the same time, certainly like if you didn't have a car, if you didn't have like a laptop, I just don't know if you could do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so what were some of your like takeaways from the book?
I mean, a lot of our experiences I've kind of experienced. So like when I got to the last question, I was like, oh, everything's the same. That's nice, but worse. Everything gets worse. Yeah. So that was my biggest takeaway. I think I was like, because I've been in it. Like I've worked in retail. I've worked in restaurants, and I have been a custodian. So I was like, oh, this is kind of that was my takeaway, honestly.
Yeah, I think some of mine was just like understanding that I was in a position for a long time of just like working from paycheck to paycheck, not being able to get ahead, but also not going low, but just kind of keeping up this thing like, okay, like I have to pay this much each month. I'm going to overdraw, and that just adds more debt. And then just like this continuing like a cycle. But luckily, like I had good support. So I was able to kind of like get out of that. But yeah, then you just start thinking, and then understand that, now I'm in school with the hope of like bettering my position, but also having the luxury of having a spouse who makes enough to cover all of our bills. So I can just focus on school and stuff. But, you just start, because I have a family too, I start thinking about what if I was in that position where it's like I'm struggling to find a job and make income. I'm struggling to find a place to like live. Well, I have to live in like a hotel that's like sketchy as shit. It's scary. So it's like I'm thankful for the position that I am in, and I don't take it lightly. Yeah,
I think that was one of my takeaways. Like, obviously, like in high school, I didn't have to like pay for much. It was mostly just for like my own personal expenses. But like I am grateful my parents like made me get a job. Like they're like, you cannot drive and like you until you have a job. So I could like honestly have that worth ethic and values. And like now that I'm on my own, I mean I still have great support like from my family, but like it definitely like not like a big reality check, but it's definitely like, yeah, I do not take it lightly. Like I have the support and like if I was struggling, like I have people to like reach out if I was to like kind of get out of like a bad situation, rather, you know, a lot of people obviously don't have that and they're living paycheck to paycheck. And now that I am like paying for all these like expenses, like I get like I had to get it, like I have my job now that I just got because like now I'm like I kind of have to get that job to like help pay for school with my parents. Like I got like FAFSA and all that. But like for like my own rent, so my trying to like be less of a burden to my parents, kind of like reach off and like make it on my own. Um, and that like it was hard to like find a job and like find a job like in like the area that like I want to get my degree in, obviously. But yeah, like I do not like take it lightly that like I have this like support, because I could be in like a way like worse situation than obviously like I'm doing just fine. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And I think
there was a time that my family and I were on government assistance just because we were in a position where we just didn't have any money or didn't have very much money. But you know, we worked hard, we prospered and was able to kind of get out of that. Um, so then it's just kind of a, you know, it sucks when you start hearing of like political stuff, like wanting to kind of cut back on those like resources. It's like, you know, that was a lifeline for us.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. Yeah. And like I have like three other siblings. So like my parents are like, I saw my two younger siblings and like my brother's going off to college next year. So it's just like I'm definitely trying to like work more because like they still have to like help support my other siblings as well. And like my sister moved back home after she graduated and all that. And so I guess like my main goal is definitely like trying to like help them, because I feel like they've done their job with me and they still have like other kids to like pay for and all that, and just really trying to like make it on my own and relieve my parents.
yeah.
I'll add to that too, because I also do feel like I am in a place of privilege, just being able to have, like, being able to live and not pay rent and go to school. But apart from like people not going to school, like, I feel like a lot of these people just like, there are a lot of people who don't have the social help from like family and friends, or if they're all in the same situation, they can't, like, they're barely able to help each other. So I do recognize that, like, and my family's been in that position too, because, you know, I grew up in like San Diego and like in the ghetto, and it is hard to get out. It was just like by chance, my mom's friend her husband lost her job, and it was a good job at a refinery. And my mom like ran to my dad and was like, "You have to get that job." And that job like changed everything, because we were able to like get out of that area, which was like kind of dangerous. And then we were able to, and then we came up here eventually. But a lot of people are stuck. They don't have the social support, and they're afraid to lose their job. And then they have to deal with just other factors of like not being able to get, or government assistance not being able to help them enough. Or for instance, if they're working too much, and then them working too much, it's like, if you work too much, you can't get this assistance.
Yeah.
But then if you work less, you'll never really be able to get out of it.
Yeah.
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 It's kind of
cycle. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why like the part of the book that really stuck with me the most was, and I already explained it once, but like when she was in the maid job and when she like revealed herself, you know, the person who was like, you know, she didn't care about the nice houses that they were cleaning. She's not like, oh, I want this like house, I want this like super car. She's like, I just want a day off and still be able to eat. Like not just, oh, I'd like a day off, but like a day off and still be able to afford to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this, yeah, that's just, it's like the cycle. You just can't break that cycle. You just have to work. So yeah,
I
so
want
that's the part that I thought about the most.
Yeah.
now that I'm talking to you guys, I'm thinking like I'm wondering like why I mean it is a good book to read, but I wonder like why she had us read it. And maybe my takeaway from like our discussion is that I want to work for an organization because I'm going to become an accountant one day, and I want to work for an organization where if we do have lower level employees that are making minimum wage, if it's like a corporation and stuff, I would want them to be treated fairly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's what she meant, or maybe she didn't mean, we all have to have everyone's going to take something different. But like, I think the contrast between like, for instance, Costco and Walmart that I've seen on the kind of back end does show me that I'm like, because I did think about it. I'm like, I would never work for an organization like that.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the morals and culture that I would support, especially because my family came from, we were very poor when I was a child, and I don't want to work for a company and help a company that keeps people down.
Right. Yeah. So it's a good book to like show you what not to do.
Yeah.
From like a company perspective. Don't treat employees like bad. Don't treat them like criminals when they haven't done anything wrong, but they're just trying to like survive.
Yep.
Yeah. So, cool. All right, good talk. This was like an hour 45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long. So.
She's gonna see it. She's gonna be like, "Damn it! Do you think she'll watch the whole thing?"
All right, so I'm gonna stop recording right now.
Okay.